Well, good evening. Today is March 16th, 2020. We appreciate very much your time here, especially in these interesting times, to say the least. There's only three of us up here today. We drew straws to see which three would serve tonight, and the three of us, not really. We've got a couple of folks out a little under the weather. Nothing more than that, just under the weather today. So we'll operate on a three-commissioner basis tonight. We're really glad that you're here, considering, and so it's been the tradition of this board and for a long, long time that we do a couple of things. First, we're going to have what's called a solemnizing prayer. We're going to have our chaplain from the Sheriff's Department assist us in that. A solemnizing prayer happens at the beginning of the meetings. It's for us. It's not for you. What we do, we take very seriously, and we seriously ask for wisdom as we're making decisions on behalf of the whole county. Following that, we'll have a Pledge of Allegiance. So, Commissioners, if you'll join me, we'll get started.
Lord, we come to you tonight, and we ask you, Lord, to help our county commissioners tonight who are here to have the wisdom they need tonight to make the many decisions need to be made, dear Lord. Thank you for their preparation that they've made to be here tonight and the work they do behind the scenes, dear Lord. Thank you for their love and support they have for Rowan County, dear Lord. We pray, Lord, you'll guide and direct this meeting tonight. Give them the wisdom they need tonight. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Before we get started, I understand that the President spoke this afternoon about keeping meetings to, is it below 10 or 10 and below? Since that just happened today, we are not going to ask to enforce that tonight. We'll see what our governor has to say about that, and then the county is trying to do all they can to address this coronavirus issue, and we're praying that this will pass, that our folks are safe, that our decision makers, some who are in the room tonight, will have wisdom, clarity of thought, and that we will support them as they make these decisions, because these are not easy. I probably shouldn't. My wife says don't, but I shouldn't be on social media. But folks have a lot of opinions out there, and I think I find myself trying to keep my opinion to myself as much as possible. Maybe folks would say I don't. But in this time, let's not panic, because the words, "this too shall pass," will happen. So let's be smart. Thank you for Aaron, your leadership, Lynn Moody, Susan, Alan, you folks. The good high sheriff is here. We appreciate their work. Randy, Ed, thank you for all y'all are doing. Don, you as well, in our facilities. So we'll continue to press forward and be smart, and just continue to pray for our community and those that we serve and those who are serving. All right, Commissioners, our agenda is before us. Do we have any additions to the agenda?
You can use this one.
Didn't look at, did you? Sneeze on it or anything?
I can't confirm or deny that.
All right. Let's see, we are going to add, see where we're going to do that. Let's add it as item 15A, an item regarding the use of the West End Plaza for relief efforts. So we'll make that item 15A.
We're still going to do closed session.
Do we still need to go into closed session? No? All right, we'll strike then item 16, no need to go into closed session.
Mr. Chairman, could remove number 9 from the agenda.
That's right. Move number 9. Anything else? If not, then motion to approve the amended agenda.
So move.
Second?
Good, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, then, we've approved the agenda. We have minutes from March 2nd. Motion to approve the minutes of March 2nd.
So move.
Second?
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
And then consider approval of the consent agenda that's been provided. Motion and a second.
So move. Second.
All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Before we go to public comment, would like to welcome Commissioner Mike Caskey back to the commission. He's been away serving in the reserves for the past month, and that's good to have you back. Good to see your smiling face, and we appreciate your service and what you do. Folks, and he's a Charlotte-Mecklenburg police officer, so he does a good job there, does a wonderful job for this community, and we appreciate your service in the reserves, Mike. Welcome back.
Thank you.
All right, we have one for public comment. Mike Taylor?
I'm not for public comment. I just want to use this time that we can pray for not only this nation, but for the world. So could we pray at this time, please? Our Heavenly Father, we come to you tonight, and our hearts are burdened for this world, all across this world we live in the United States of America, dear Lord. We're going through a plague right now, Lord, and we certainly need your help. We need your wisdom, dear Lord, to make it through these times, dear Lord. You said to come boldly into the throne of grace to obtain mercy, to find grace to help in a time of need, dear Lord. We have a need tonight, dear Lord. We pray for the many families that's been affected, the many lives that's been taken, dear Lord. And we know and we read in the Word of God, the Old Testament, about many times plagues came upon the land, but we know that people did the right thing and the plague was stayed and the victory was won, dear Lord. So, Lord, I pray that we'll do our part, that the plague might be stayed, dear Lord. I pray you'll give our leaders the wisdom they need to make the right decisions during these times, dear Lord. And I pray that we'll all be brought closer to you, dear Lord. There's a purpose and a plan behind each thing that takes place, dear Lord. Sometimes we don't understand it, dear Lord, but we know there is, dear Lord. We know you control all things, dear Lord, and all things are in your hands, dear Lord. You said, trust in the Lord with all thine heart, lean not into thine own understanding. Acknowledge him in all thy ways, and he'll direct thy paths. Lord, would you direct our paths during this period of time? We pray you'll help us, dear Lord, guide and lead us, dear Lord. We come and confess our sins to you tonight, Lord Jesus, that we might be healed in this world we live in the land we live in, dear Lord. Please help us, dear Lord. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Rowan County, this is not a time to fight. This is a time to help one another. Not a time to fight. It's a time to help one another. You know, elderly that need help, please reach out. Parents with children, please reach out. This is not a time to fight. This is a time to help one another. So please, 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 would you do that? All right, let's move on. Item number 3. Ed, welcome. I have a speech that I need to read. I'll do that after. Do I do that before or after? Before?
Before.
All right, so there's a speech or a statement that I have to read by law, so let me get through that. It's the hearing for consideration of an amendment to CUP 08-16 is now in session, and will focus on an application submitted by Mr. Trent Cherry to construct 7 tree houses and 3 underground cabins for temporary and overnight lodging on tax parcel 120.14-140 located on Flat Rock Road. If anyone present feels that any member of this board may have a conflict of interest in hearing the case, please address the board now prior to any testimony or information being presented. When the board enters into deliberations to decide the case, no further testimony may be presented. The board will render one of the following 3 decisions. 1, approve the permit as requested or with additional conditions. 2, continue the request, or 3, deny the request. All parties who plan to testify in this case must come forward and be sworn in. Those who testify must state their name and address at the podium for the benefit of the board's clerk. All material presented must be given to the clerk and will become part of the record. This board can only accept sworn testimony. No hearsay evidence is admissible, and Ed will provide the staff report for this application. So welcome.
If you'll lay your left hand on the Bible and raise your right. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to provide is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? I do.
Thank you. Just to reiterate, as the chair made reference to in the opening remarks, this is an amendment to a previously issued conditional use permit. Generally speaking, the applicant has requested to add 2 units that were approved in 2016 that he didn't get the opportunity to construct because the permit's only valid for a 2-year window. And with that, he's also proposed to construct 5 additional treehouse units, and then there's 3 underground cabins that he has termed hobbit houses. So some of this may be a refresher for you, but I'm going to go through this rather briefly. The property is located on Flat Rock Road. It has over 1,600 feet of frontage along Flat Rock Road. It's in the WS4 critical area, which has a minimum lot sizes that apply to residential units. We'll talk a little bit about that later. There's no regulated floodplain. There's no identified wetlands on the property. In looking at the zoning in the area, it's surrounded to the east by the pink there, which we call rural residential. The gray would be the municipal limits of both China Grove and Landis. So they basically encumber it from the east. And then if you look to the west, it's by and large RA zoning in that particular direction. Looking at the 2018 aerial photograph, you can see some of the residential uses that surround the property. The tree houses were not picked up in this particular image, but one of the things that's mentioned in the staff report that doesn't show up here as well is that there's a couple new houses that have been built within about 1/4 mile. I think probably this one was a replacement of a unit, but there's a modular here. I think a new home was built here, and then there's 3 north along 152. So there have been about 5 new homes built within the last 4 years within a half mile of the project. One of the things we wanted to try to do was give you an idea of what this project looks like on site. So we took the drone out, and Aaron Poplin flew this. This is coming in the main drive on Treehouse Lane off of Flat Rock Road. This first unit here is one of the original that were built. Again, this gives you a view back out towards Flat Rock Road rather quickly. This is going south along the internal road. There's another unit that's there in the woods. He has an equipment shop there in the lower left that you can see. There's another unit on the opposite side of the creek there that we'll look at later. These are the 2, I think maybe the 2 are the newer units at the lower end. And he's got another little storage area there. This is going to be looking east towards the Seckler Estate property that was referenced there, where the new home was built or replaced. That road is called Beaver Road. And then we're going to go north along that tree line. And as we move north, think where you see some of that contour change there is probably in the vicinity of where the underground cabins or the hobbit houses will be built. So I think we'll go north and then come back.
Sheriff, if you look at these cars, I think you need to set up a couple of sting operations there, because they're driving pretty fast. Well, now they've slowed down. See, just mentioning your name, they slowed down.
Again, that's Flat Rock Road, and then this is looking back along the area. So this will be the lower portion of the property. There is a unit there. Again, we're looking north toward the existing units. And based on the site plan that we'll look at here in a little bit, a lot of these newer units will be tucked into this tree line as well. Okay. So again, if you remember that turn north along this tree line, that took in that subdivision that would have been to the east. Here's the site plan. As most things go, when you move from one version of PowerPoint to another one, it tends to look bad. So there's a site plan in your packet or in the material that you've got that was prepared by a local engineer, which has got a lot of good data on it. What we had tried to do is superimpose the new roads relative to the existing road and where these existing units would be, which we saw here, and the proposed units. If you remember, I mentioned the lower property. The bulk of these are proposed to be what I would anticipate to be tucked in this tree line here. And then, if you remember sort of that little contour working our way north, you can see that's where these were proposed. So again, the total would be an additional 10 units. And Hobbit House. This is a canned image I found. In case you weren't familiar with it, I think this is probably what Trent may or may not have in mind. But anyway, I think it's got a grass roof on it. So you can go home tonight and tell your family you know what a Hobbit House is. So these are the existing units. We saw these in the flyby. These are some that we took when we were out there last week. So let's jump into the conditional use criteria. I think you all know these rather well, these 6 that we have. Adequate transportation to the site exists. It's contained in the staff report, but both entrances, one specifically has obtained the DOT approval. The lower has a verbal approval. The use will not significantly detract from the character of the surrounding area. Again, based on the site plan, it appears that they are positioned within the existing tree line. 5 new homes have been built within a half mile of the project. Hazardous safety conditions will not result. We went through this in the last rendition that all of them comply with the building code. We've talked with the building inspections folks, and they've reiterated that there seem to be no concerns on their part. When we talk about noise, odor, glare, and dust, I don't think any of those really apply, with the exception of maybe noise. I have had at least 3 calls since the application, since the signs went up, and those have been sort of their biggest concern is At times, there have been people that stay there that are having a good time. And they don't mind that, they just really don't want to hear it and kind of don't want to see it. Moving on, excessive traffic or parking problems will not result. We require one parking space per unit, and that is provided. Flat Rock Road, we don't see any impacts there. DOT kind of concurs with us in that regard. And then the use will not create significant visual impacts for adjoining properties or passerby. So again, we've talked about where those are positioned and how they're positioned, so that should not be that big of an issue for some of them. So there are some specific criteria. The minimum lot size is 2 acres. Based on the site plan that was provided, he's got about 12 acres that are encumbered by the site plan. Setbacks shouldn't be a problem. They're only 50 feet off the front or 20 feet off the side and the rear. The health department does determine the density, but as I mentioned earlier, the watershed requirements dictate 1 unit per 20,000 square feet. That shouldn't be an issue here. The interior drives we've looked at. The site plan does indicate that the lower is 12 feet. That will need to be changed, but we can work through that because generally what this opportunity does is consider the use. More or less the specifics kind of get worked out at the staff level. Again, I mentioned parking. You got 1 space per site. That doesn't seem to be an issue. Screening and buffering, type A, and the 20 foot is the requirement. I think if you feel that it can or should be, screening or fencing can be a condition of approval. So,
What are your thoughts on that? I mean, it's in the woods.
I think it's always worthwhile to go out and look before they're built. You know, sometimes it doesn't appear as evident from that flyover or site plan. Again, I encourage the folks that call to be here because I said I can only look at what I see on the plan and what I see when I'm there. I don't live there. And so I don't know what you see that causes you a problem, and that's why you need to be here. That's why this process exists. So,
Wouldn't the fact that these are tree houses make buffering even more difficult?
very well could, yeah. So
Does the owner live close to these rentals?
that's a good question. He is here, and he can probably address some of those questions. And there may be folks that are here that just didn't know that they needed to be sworn in, so that's also a possibility. But here's our staff recommendation, that he get a driveway permit, go ahead and apply for it for that lower entrance. It appears it's being used to some degree now, so it'd be good to go ahead and get that taken care of. Fairly easy thing to do is the road names for consideration of that road. We'll assign addresses to it so that all that's already set up in 911. Again, that lower road and maybe the existing road, we can talk with him about enhancing what's there as far as the width and the stone requirements. And then, I mean, this should be a given, but it's comply with whatever building code and environmental health standards are in place for construction and operation. That's kind of quick. There's a lot of stuff here, but you have seen it before. I'll be glad to answer any questions, but Trent is here as well, and I think he can probably answer some questions that you may have specifically. All right, thank you.
Trent, want to come on up? I don't know if I need to remove myself from this. One of my Christmas presents is my wife has got a gift card for us to go out to your place sometime soon.
Still valid.
Huh?
I said it's still valid.
Is it? Okay,
Yeah.
good. Not contingent on our decision here. The public should know. But I look forward to being out there.
Cool, thank you.
So, Jim, you have a question?
Yeah, my question was, how close do you live to this site, Trent?
About 2.5 miles, maybe 2 miles. I live Woodland Drive, First Street past the Sandy Ridge on the right. And it's, I mean, you can hit a golf ball over Wild Bill's farm over the Landis Elementary to get to Flat Rock from where my house is. So
How many strokes?
Let's know how many strokes you give him.
depends on if you hit it straight.
No, if we're receiving phone calls about problems there with folks enjoying themselves a little too much, how do you see that you can resolve this problem?
Well, I think, and Ed, correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like most of them came probably December 8th. December 8th, we had a Winterfest, and everybody's been asking me to see the tree houses. Everybody in the community wants to see them, so we opened them up to the public, and we let everybody come in. We had a bounce house for kids. We had a movie in our amphitheater, and that ran till 8 o'clock. So I guess December, it got dark at about 6:30, and I don't know if that's factual, but I believe some people had called in about that day. Where we live, guns go off every day. All right, yesterday somebody blew off about 200 rounds, and it felt like it was in my backyard, and I live 2 miles. The guy at the end of the street shoots, he said, once a week in his backyard, and he lives on Beaver Street, Mr. Tidwell. I think he was going to be here, but the whole corona thing slowed him down. The other thing I would say is in the last 4.5 years we've had this, there's been no service calls to my property. I had law enforcement check on that. There's been no service calls for anything. So the way I would say is, obviously we don't allow weapons on the property. We don't allow ATVs, four-wheelers. We don't allow anything. The 90% of our clientele is mom, dad, and kids, and they come to get away from the Nintendos and the PlayStations, and we don't have Wi-Fi out there. Can I tell you that there's not been a group sometime that stayed up till 10 o'clock around the campfire and, might have got caught talking too loud? No. But I think, obviously I could put a time limit on how long you're allowed to stay out there, but I think 3 calls over a year's period, and I think a couple of those were on the same day of Winterfest, I don't see as being a huge problem.
All right, well, thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Okay. All right, so what we'll do now, you got something?
No.
Okay, what we'll do now is we'll open the floor and we're going to have a public hearing. If there's anyone that has something they'd like to talk about regarding this request, this would be the time to come forward. Do we need to swear her in? Okay. Yeah, come on forward and we'll have to swear you in on this. Hi, welcome.
Hi, how are you?
Good.
My name is Donna Hampton, and I live on Beaver Road, just due east of the tree resort. Have a really good view of it, especially in the wintertime. I have no privacy in my backyard anymore. I've been living over there about 20-some years, and the reason I moved there is so that I didn't want to live in town. I wanted to live out in the county and see the countryside, and I don't have that anymore. So I miss that. Now, sometimes it's a little bit different. There are trees behind my property, or on my property, between myself and the agricultural field. And so when the trees are leafed out, I don't see quite as much over there. But I was told that when people don't show up for hearings like this, then the commissioners think that everybody's happy, everybody's in agreement, there's harmony, and everybody is just happy about everything, but I'm not happy. I don't agree with this. I'm here to speak in opposition because I don't want to see any further development. I'm sure Mr. Cherry doesn't want to hear that, but he doesn't live right there like I do. I'm tired of the noise because I live just due east, and wind travels from west to east. I hear the noise. I hear that when the garbage disposal truck comes in, and slam, bam, wham, when they pick up the thing and throw it back over the truck. I hear that. So it's not all peace and quiet back there. And I'm tired of the number of people that come back there. I'm tired of, sometimes there are a lot of cars back there. I have seen 20 or 30 cars at one time at one location, and I thought that that was not going to happen. But it has, and it's happened numerous times. Last year, I believe it was, can't remember exactly when, there was, seemed like there was a group of college students back there. And they stayed up pretty late and were whooping it up, hollering, carrying on. I'm sure there was probably drinking going on. And I thought to myself, I thought, if this goes on past 12 o'clock tonight, I'm calling somebody. And so they quieted down after a while, and I didn't have to call. But I thought about calling Mr. Cherry and letting him come over and then straighten everything out, because I'm sure he wouldn't want to be awakened in the middle of the night many times to come over and calm people down. But I would like to see no further development over there. And I think if he is allowed to pursue his dream, then he should provide screening so that the private homeowners or property owners over there don't have to be affected by that, don't have to see it. And so that's what I'm here to say tonight, is that I don't agree with it. I'm opposed to it, and I'm letting you know how I feel. And I guess that's all that I have to say right now. I tried to cover all my bases, but sometimes when you have people before you, you forget some of what you wanted to say. But just know that I'm not in favor of it. I'm opposed to further development. I'm sorry that Mr. Cherry and I butt heads, I mean, as far as our ideas, but maybe if he had bought land further out, that wouldn't be a problem. But the way I understand it, there are other homeowners over there, or property owners, that have voiced concerns about this as well. So I guess that's all I have to say right now.
All right, Ms.
But I thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you for taking the time to come.
Does your property adjoin his property?
I think so. I think it backs up to it, because there's an agricultural field in between me and where he has his tree houses. So I think my property backs up to it, yes.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Ed, could we put a map back up, or a aerial back up?
We don't have a cadastral, excuse me, don't have a cadastral map here, but
Any idea where she may be? Ms. Hampton?
Yes.
Could you tell us where you are on this map?
445 Beaver Road.
so it may be like right in here somewhere.
I think it's farther down than that, because, you want me to take the mouse?
Sure.
I think I am, oops, I'm sorry.
It's all right.
The wrong thing.
I think the pointer's over there.
There's a pointer, okay. I think I am like about right in here somewhere. I think, darn it.
So there's a wood
If
line.
I would pull it up on my,
Wood line between you and the property, his
Pardon me?
property.
Pardon?
Is there a wood line between you
a
and his
wood
property?
line, like woods?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
If I pulled it up on my phone where you go to Google Maps, I could show you, but I can't really tell with this map exactly. It's a lot the same, but I'm looking at where the
But you are on the west side of Beaver Road.
Yes.
Okay, so there's no property between you and there, your property
Yeah.
adjoins his, so
Yeah.
that may answer Commissioner Green's question.
Okay, I'm sorry, didn't quite understand. But I'm about where, I know where his driveway comes in. And it's hard to say, but there, you see the rounded part of the wooded area in the middle of the long rectangle, sort of rectangle? Where that rounded area is, if you go almost straight across, I'm about there.
Okay. All right, thank
Okay.
you. Trent, come on up. So not speaking for the other commissioners, but I think we are all huge fans of private property rights until it starts infringing on other folks' private property rights. I think a nightmare is when folks move out to an area and then, this begins to happen to them, and it reduces their enjoyment, and in their mind reduces the value of what they've paid. So, you've heard, I'm speaking for me now, you've heard what her concerns are, so how do we address that?
Well, I think she spoke last time that we were here, and in the last 3 years, she's never come to talk to me once. And I'm easy to get along with. I know Mr. Tidwell. I actually just bought the property and took down the house that's right underneath the next block. And 2 neighbors came out and thanked me for doing that and said they love the tree houses. And I guess the only thing I would address to that is, the high school's closer than really my property is. And, I hear the spiel about I bought this property to be in quiet, and I understand that 100%. But you bought it next to a high school that plays music every Friday night in the fall, and they got band practice on the field, and there's kids that sneak through the fields from the high school. That to me would be a bigger problem than my farm. We only house 23 at a time. And to answer the question of the wood line, it's about 100 feet. And when you get it in, 9 months out of the year when there's leaves on the trees, you can't see the back road. The aerial picture Ed took was probably at the deadest part of the season, and you can barely see through it. So there's a huge buffer, I think, to answer Mr. Green's question or whoever asked about the buffer. There's a huge buffer between the trees. So, I don't know which house is hers, but I know, I got an email in my folder of a lady that said she absolutely loves looking across the field and seeing the lights at night on the trees and all that, and I guess the only other thing I'd like to address too is the dumpster. I don't know how she gets her trash picked up, but I do have a dumpster, and there is a trash guy that picks it up every other week. If that's the noise ordinance that we're messing up, I don't know how to fix that.
If she's got 100 feet of, if there's 100 feet of tree line in there, I don't know what good asking for any additional buffering would be in there.
Especially if they're tree houses.
How do you get up that high? It'd take 15 years to get it up there.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
One of the things that I failed to say when we were talking about these general conditional use criteria is the idea that when we talk about the character of the area, do 10 additional units fit the character of the area? Mr. Cherry just said there's 23 potential occupants for 5. So if we've got 15, that means you've got 69. Is that right? On any given weekend? The difference between this is that it's a commercial entity. It is a business adjoining a residential piece of property, a lot of residential pieces of property. And so the concerns that they have are a little bit different than if these were just residential units. These are they're overnight lodging, it's a different animal. They meet the residential building code, but it's a different entity. And so that's really the question, I think, before you tonight. We've got standards that apply to this, but, in terms of the character of the area, they do a lot to try to blend themselves in, but, when you go from 23 to 69, that's a big difference. So, and it may not be 69, but, maybe the occupancy load is a little less, but that's why we go through this process.
And this is a pretty novel use. It's the only one we have, and it's a rising industry in North Carolina. And we as staff are sort of grappling with all the other issues that come into play with this kind of development. And two of the conditions are designed to address that, which is compliance with the building code, but also compliance with environmental health regulation with regard to water and septic and the current issue now with lodging rules and things like that. And so we're kind of grappling with all those issues as well as staff and how to regulate this. But I think it is a good point to know that, while the appearance is of tree houses in the woods, you do reach a capacity issue with 60 or 70 people out there on weekends every night. And those are issues that we need to look at for compatibility, for sure.
Can I address that? I see your point, Ed. I think the only thing we're failing to realize is that because I'm applying for these extra ones doesn't mean it's going to 100% be all built out. I pay as I go, meaning as long as there's people that want them, I build one at a time. If there's not supporting 23, I'm not going to go build 10 more for 69. And we build them, we have multiple ones that house 2 people, so to say it could be 69 or 70 is a grand number, I think, in reality. And to be honest, I don't think I could ever get to 15. I'm applying for it because I want to leave my options open, but I think we're all assuming that within the next, 18 months, there's going to be 10 more additional tree houses. I'll go broke before that happens. So I think the other thing is with the extra piece of land I just bought, there's 27.2 acres. And when you look at a development of 27 acres somewhere, there's hundreds of people in that development versus right now my 23 people on 27 acres. So I think, you build a road and put houses, you're going to have 10 times the amount of people that I have there. And I think the last thing is, part of what I have is to bring families to get away and have a nice, quiet weekend. There are the occasional women's groups that come in for the hippie fest, or they come in for whatever, Rowan County. We lodge a lot of people for a lot of different things. And that group, there might be 3 of them that get a little wild, but for the most part, our whole MO is to have a lot of peace and quiet and enjoy the woods, right? And so that's kind of, I was over here listening, and I know the numbers, when you add them up, sounds like 69, but it would be years down the road before I built out 15. I'm just applying, so I don't have to go through this process again if I had to. So to be honest, I'm just building them one at a time and kind of see where that goes.
What do you, so when your clients come in, I assume they sign some sort of agreement. What in your agreement says, what does it say about noise, and how do you address that? What do you tell them to certain hours you need to calm down, or how do you have that addressed?
Airbnb is where we do most of our rentals through, and they have an agreement when you sign up with them on noise ordinance. I do have a house rules on every refrigerator about no smoking, no guns on the property, no ATVs, be respectful to your neighbors. The problem we got is there's 5 tree houses, so if your tree house is partying, that's a problem for the guy right next to you in the tree house, right? So, I'm out there daily. I live 2 miles from the property. I've never had one client or guest call me about another guest because of noise. So, you would think in 5 tree houses, if one tree house is partying it up and making a lot of noise, that someone else in the other tree house would call me and say, hey, the guest up in the Miss Molly's really loud. Can you shut them down? I've never had a call. for that part. So I think when it gets into the full bloom of the trees, you really can't see treehouse to treehouse. It blocks a lot of that.
So if you ever came to the issue where there was someone that was just being out of hand, how would you remedy that situation? Would you kick them off the property that night, or what would you do?
Yeah, I mean, I'd walk over. I mean, I live 2 miles. I'd drive over and see what the problem is, and if there's a problem, like I said, I can't tell you because we've never had it, but I feel like I'm pretty good at, my job is managing 40, 25 to 35-year-olds, so I think I could handle remedying the situation. I've got Officer Lambert that works over at South Rowan. He drives through the property all the time. He asked if he could just drive through, and occasionally going back and forth to work, so I don't think it ever is a bad thing to see a cop car comes by and says hey all the time, but we've really just never had any trouble, so I don't really know how to address that. If it happened, I'd go over and see what happened and kind of go from there when we have it.
Okay, thank you.
I think one issue is that there's not on-site supervision. I think that can be one issue, and that's just kind of how you've chosen to run that. I mean, I'm inclined to approve, but not approve for what you're asking for, which is 8 more units. I would be inclined to reapprove the 2 units that we have and kind of see where we go from there.
What would have been the point of me reapplying them, because I already had zoning for 7? So,
Well, didn't,
His permit had expired, so you're right, yeah, he would have had to do that anyway.
yeah.
yeah, I wasn't aware of any of that, so I didn't know what that was about at all.
Yeah, so without you coming in here, you wouldn't have been able to build the 2 that you were already approved for because that expired? Is that right, Ed?
Yes, sir.
I guess I'd have found that out when I showed up, because I did not know that.
Yeah.
I got builders already scheduled from California coming in June, and all I knew was I was approved for 7. I'm not a builder. I don't know all the rules, but I did not know that.
Yeah, so this is reapproving the original 2 that had expired, and then along with another 8 that would total 15. And I mean, I'd be inclined to reapprove the 2 that had expired, and then kind of see where we go from there. Well, we're kind of not at the discussing point at this point. All right, does anyone else have anything else to say? If not, then we can close the public hearing, and then, the commissioners could discuss the case.
Yes, sir,
So,
can I say something, one more thing?
yes.
The reason I have not called Trent is because, the reason I've not called Trent about any noise over there is because I was trying to be a good neighbor, and I thought, I'm not going to be whiny, I'm not going to complain a lot, I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt, and if it gets really bad where I just can't stand it, and I can hear it in the house, then I'm going to call him up, and I'm going to say, you need to come over here and do something, because I think if I call him up at home, he's not going to want me to do that too many times, to get up in the middle of the night to come over there and take care of something that's going on. So I've been trying to keep a low profile and be a good neighbor and try to be tolerant and not be whiny all the time. And that's why I've not called Trent. I try to, and like the weekend they had the college students there, I think it was college students because it sounded like it, loud music and yelling, whooping, hollering, carrying on, screaming, yelling. I thought, well, if this carries on beyond 12 o'clock, which normally, I know this is different, but when you're at the beach or somewhere, usually 11, 12 o'clock is quiet time after that. Everybody's supposed to calm down. And I thought, well, if it gets past 11 or 12 o'clock, then I'll just give him a call. And so luckily, they calmed down enough that I didn't have to call. But I have thought about it. And I think there are other people over there that are hearing things, and noise and other things. And I know probably Trent is trying to do this to enhance what's going on over there, but the place is lit up like the Biltmore Estate at night. And that's just not my idea of living out there. You know, I would just want to see country, landscape, farmland. That's just why I live out there. And I understand he's trying to make things look nice, but I don't really care for that. So, but I've been trying to be a good neighbor and not be really whiny or, you know, just calling him for every little thing, so.
All right, well, thank you.
Well, part of it, if you don't talk for 3 years, then maybe he doesn't know some of the things that's happening.
Pardon me?
If he says he hadn't talked to you in 3 years, maybe he doesn't know some of the things that you know, and no one else is telling him either. So if y'all can communicate a little bit more, maybe some of the issues can be handled, you know,
Well,
between
what
you.
would you suggest, that I call him?
Yes, yeah, give him a call if you've got some issues. I'm sure he'd like to hear from the neighbors.
I've
if
debated
there's
whether to
issues.
just call the police out there or whether to call him. And I thought, well, if I call him, if it's bad enough, then he's not going to want to be wakened in the middle of the night very many times. So he'll probably do something about that group that night. But I've been trying to be tolerant and be patient and be a good neighbor.
Yeah.
But if
like
you
I said,
think that's what I should do, then the next time that happens, then I will give a call.
yeah, he's not going to know if someone doesn't call him. You know, if he's 2 miles away and and if it's the middle of the night and you think it's too loud, then it's his business. He expects people to contact him about it.
Well, I just thought it was his business to make sure that everybody knows what the code of conduct is. You know?
Well, yeah, I'm sure they give that out, but you know how people do whatever they're going to do. So,
Right.
nobody in the world's perfect. So,
Right.
I'm sure people get out of hand sometimes. I see that quite a lot, but
Do you?
yeah.
I have had some of my neighbors say, well, Donna, what's the big deal? Why are you so upset? At least it's not a housing development, but it's the same difference. When you've got people over there all the time, it's just different people coming in and out all the time. It's just like a housing development, same difference.
Well, plus the other part is, you know, if you hold it in for 3 years, you know, it kind of builds up, and sometimes just talking back and forth will relieve some of the
Well, you're
stress
right.
for you.
I agree with you on that. But I just didn't feel that it was my duty to call him up and say, you need to get over here, your tenants are acting up. You know, I felt like that he should address that with them beforehand. Of course, I know things can always happen, and people get out of hand even when you've told them before what is expected of them. So yeah, I see your point.
Trent, does she have your number?
No, but she can have it after this.
I think it's in the phone book. I know where he lives. It would be no problem to go right over there.
Okay.
I'm sure he wouldn't want me to do that, though.
I'm easy.
All right, well, thank you again, Ms. Hampton.
Thank you.
I do have one other thing, Commissioner. the only thing I want to ask about this particular thing is, like, Rowan County's built their thing as being original, right? And I have all the stats you want to know, but we're ranked as one of the top places in North Carolina for glamping, and it's in Rowan County. We've been in 3 magazines, we've been on TV twice. We've had people last year from 12 different countries come into Rowan County. I've paid all my taxes. I pay everything. I mean, we have people that come in and they think China Grove is off a Hallmark movie. I mean, it's funny to us, but I have people coming from all over the world that come in, and the new thing is this Florida to New York trip, and they stop through on the way by because they do all these Airbnbs. And I've made it a big priority to make my stuff the nicest stuff in the state. And I've had people that stay at multiple lodging places, and the pictures Ed showed up there, I mean, they're built right. You know, there's not any steps that I've skipped. And we have people that come into this county. I bet I've sent 500 people to Lazy Five Ranch in the last 2 years, families that come in, and we send them to Landis Wilderness Park, and we send them all over Rowan County. So, you know, I would like to ask, just being able to add them and do stuff to help being original. Part of the Hobbit House thing is there's not many in this country. There's maybe 5, and I've got an idea of what I want to do, and I think it would be huge for the county and families to come in and do something like that. and it would be original. And I think that's kind of what this county is basing their stuff on. And, you know, up until 10 minutes ago, I was not under, you know, the impression that I was reapplying for the 2 I thought I already had. I was trying to get more. So now I got a lot to take in now. You know, I got stuff that I wasn't aware of coming into this, but all I want to do is put nice stuff out there, keep it spread out, keep it private. And yes, I will address my neighbor. She's probably one of few that I don't know that I've talked to, but I talked to a lot of those guys on Beaver Street, so I can handle that part.
First of all, it's not fair that you hit us with our own slogan.
Sorry, I just saw it when I walked in. I think tree houses are pretty original.
Not fair at all, but do you have a limit of cars per unit?
Yeah, 2.
So, I mean, are college students showing up there, a couple of kids rent it, and then, hey, guys, party over at the, you know, tree house on Friday night, and you got 30 cars showing up? Is that happening?
I've never been aware of that. And honestly, on Airbnb, you're only allowed to have so many people. And I'm telling you, I'm at that farm 6-7 days a week. I know everything that's going on. If there's a party that comes in, I mean, the loudest group we ever had was a group of 40-year-old women coming in for the hippie fest. And I happened to be over there. And at 8:30 at night, they were taking it pretty deep. And I said, ladies, let's make sure you don't get me in trouble. Right? I don't know what college kids, you can't rent from Airbnb if you're under 21. So I don't know if she's guessing it was college kids, or it could have been. But those women were the loudest I've had. And I went over there and told them, hey, the festival is tomorrow in Salisbury. Make sure you make it. But other than that, man, people come in for a good time, you know, a quiet, good time. And a lot of the stuff you guys have, the Thomas the Train, the Polar Express I'm booked solid with Polar Express people. And I'm on the website for the tourism, you know. And so I just, you know, I'm all about trying to help the community and the county, but I don't feel like I should be limited 100% if I'm wanting to do one at a time and as it gets there. I'm not going to want to put 15 units if they're all packed on each other. Then the guys aren't going to rent my places because they come for opposite of that, you know.
Jay?
Do you have special events out there?
We've had the Winterfest, December 8th, where it was a tour, and we've had, in the last 5 years, we've had 4 weddings of 50 people or less.
But you advertise for up to 125 guests?
We have, yep, for the weddings.
Yeah, so we're not just talking about overnight guests. I mean, we're talking about special events, and you've got a special events coordinator.
Yeah, we've had 4 weddings.
And corporate events and birthdays. But you're advertising for up to 125 guests for an event.
Yes, that's how many the amphitheater if it was packed out, but no one's done that yet.
Yeah, so I think we're talking a little bit more about than just tree houses for what we're doing out there, and I think you're right to take your time and look at it.
All right. I'm going to close the public hearing. All right. Then commissioners, all 3 of us, any discussion?
So what was it that you were proposing, Greg?
So the request is to reauthorize the 2 units that had expired and add an additional 8, which would be for a total of 15. And so I was thinking, in order for us to take a see how it goes approach, to reapprove the 2 that we had done, get those reauthorized. And then after those are built,
So
reevaluate and see.
those 2, if I'm not mistaken, he's already got lined up to be built. Did he say that?
Those already,
One of them, anyway.
Those are tree houses? Those are going to be tree houses?
Yes, sir. There's already been power run for them, and the septic was put in for those 2 when I went to do the 5th one.
what
I do-
after that? A Hobbit after that? A Hobbit comes third?
That depends on if the occupancy rate of the tree houses are kind of stale or dropping. Yes, I'd like to have the option of doing that. I think that'd be really unique, and I think that would be, after I got the next 2 tree houses, that's what I'd like to try, yes.
I would, I think the Hobbit House is an interesting idea. I mean, I wouldn't mind letting him try one of those or something.
Noisy underground.
Yeah. Possibly.
One thing could I ask, because the site plan kind of locks everything in, so if you make a recommendation to do 2 or an additional 4, whatever you come up with, try to give us an idea based on this, which ones they are, because when he comes back in, that will be where we go to see where the road stops or where it has to meet the standards to. You know, if there's any additional screening that may apply, that kind of thing.
Could they condition that approval, Ed, on showing a revised site plan with a Phase 2, Phase 1, what's constructed now, and Phase 2, what's allowed to be constructed?
He's got that now. I mean, the site plan is not problematic. The problem is that it's,
But showing the specific next phase.
So the black squares are existing.
no, the black squares are proposed.
Oh,
Proposed, yeah.
well, those would be away from everything, wouldn't it?
Well, let me rephrase that. I think this is an existing one, that's proposed, and all these are proposed, and then these 3. This is the.
Where
only-
the, come on back up, Trent. Where are the Hobbit houses? I never thought I'd have to use
They're
that
up
term
here.
in my lifetime, but where are those
Where
3?
Ed's got the cursor, there's 3 rolling hills in my farm. And I thought it'd be cool to put in the rolling part, because you have to dig into the round part to do the whole Hobbit-looking thing. We did talk about putting one in the woods, if, depending on what we could do, because if there's a bank, you know, I want it to all look seamlessly. But as of now, the rolling hills on that right side near the tree line on that present the best possibility to put them back into the hill.
So those 3 open squares down at the bottom, where would your next 2 tree houses be?
So where Ed's got the cursor, the treehouse that's existing is right here. That's number 5, and then that would be 6, and that would be 7. There's septic put in place here for all 3, because I got that done thinking I had the 7, and then I've got power already pulled at boxes for these 2. When Landis ran the power, I had to pay to have the power put in. We went ahead and just put it there, so if we did, I didn't have to come through and redo it, because I told them, you know, like I said, I thought I had 7. So there's already septic and there's already power at those 2 spots.
So the black boxes, are those existing?
No, sir, those are the ultimate goal, if everything went great, would be have this road come in and do a big U-turn and have a couple on this side of the tree line, and then you come out. So those 5 would be the proposed tree houses. And then on the other side where the field was, and the only thing, and Ed, I don't know how this works in zoning, but like if we were to have a guy come out here, some Hobbit professional, and said, hey, this is an okay spot, but this spot's better, are we able to move? I mean, all on the same property, obviously, but if we were to go 300 feet down instead of right where this square was, is that going to be a deal breaker type thing? Because I might have to put septic at a certain part of the field, or my leach field, and it pushes me down, and I don't want someone to be like, oh, you're 25 feet off where you said this was going to go.
He would need to submit an amended plan. Because the whole point, I mean, 25 feet in one direction might not be a big deal, but 25 feet towards the neighbor might be completely different. So, yeah, we would require an amended plan.
Now, I think Ms. Hampton would probably venture to say that if he built these down here, it doesn't have as much impact to her as it did if they were right here.
Yeah, you can't even see across that field from the Beaver Road. That's the farthest field. There's nothing but cows on that side of the other tree line.
Where would your first Hobbit be?
As of now, it would be where the cursor is, right here. And it would be tucked, there's a big rolling hill, it'd be right here where that cursor is. And that's the thickest, one of the thickest parts of the woods. I know we said it's 100 feet. I'd venture to say it's 200 or 300 to the...
The hill on this side?
Yeah, so I'd be, if you're looking out the front door, the hill's behind me, and it's where that kick out in the site plan is, of the trees. And that's partially why I bought that other lot, that acre lot, is that just gives me more buffer from any of the neighbors. But that would be the first proposed spot. Yes, sir.
All right, thank you. So I'll make, unless we have some more discussion, just to get us going, so we can see where we are on this, commissioners, I'll make a motion that we approve the 2 expired units plus 1 additional for the Hobbit House, let him dip his toe into that. And then we'll just have to come back and kind of see how those go. If it's going to be in a different site than what he's pointed out there, then he'd have to come back with a new site plan request. Jay, is that what you were saying? And then, Ed, you've got some recommendations for conditions.
Yeah, they just,
Plus those 3.
yeah, so the 2 tree houses would be on the lower drive, right? Correct. Okay, and then the Hobbit House is that lower unit. So, yeah, item 1, he's already gotten the verbal from him. He just need to go ahead and make it official when he gets ready to pull those. And then those other 2 standards, yeah.
Okay, so my,
If he already knows where one of the Hobbit houses is going, and that's on this plan, if we approve that, why does he have to do a new site plan?
only if he changes location. We move the Hobbit to another location.
So there's a possibility of you moving it from one of these locations here? Or if we pick out one, if you pick out one that we'll approve tonight?
Yeah, I mean, those 3 on that hill, you know, the only other talk I had is instead of the 7th treehouse being the closest to the road, because it was closest to the road, I met with the local builders today. We said we could build treehouse 6 and potentially put that Hobbit as number 7. Instead of being up high where the road noise is, you'd be underground, the one closest to the road. That would be the only other location. But yes, if I had to get the zoning, tell you specifically where it was going to go, it's already perked up on that field. So that was part of where the hills were, of where it would have to go. I could stick to that if that was part of the deal.
Well, you need to do what's best for you, but just if you're going to change it, you'll have to come back and work through Ed's.
Yeah, I was just trying to figure out a way he could get 3 of them approved tonight, 1 Hobbit House and the 2 that you already have, so that gives you at least 3 years of work that you can do and not have to come back and go through this for 3 years is what my thinking was on that.
I'd appreciate that. Is there any way you could, on the one that's closest to the road, Ed, do you have that map? Is there any way, if we did the 3 like you're asking, the one that's farthest left, the white box, could that be a zone, either treehouse or Hobbit, depending on, and why I ask that is if I build treehouse number 6 and my occupancy rate drops 20% on treehouses, then I want to make my number 7 a Hobbit House in that location because I'm losing business putting the same thing that nobody else is renting. So that would give me the flexibility to put a Hobbit there, and I could mark one on the existing where it would go on the hill. So almost like a Hobbit, a treehouse in one mix. Would that be something that I could talk to you guys about? Because I don't know until I build treehouse number 6. Each time I build a treehouse, my occupancy rate goes down a little. But if it were to drop off the market, then I don't want to be forced into building a 7th one in that same location.
We got you. Yeah, I'm fine with that. See, we're still just approving 3 total.
Yeah.
And just to be clear again, we're talking about here, here, and here,
Right.
right?
May I make a suggestion?
Sure.
If he's gonna do a Hobbit house, I'd rather be as far away from my house as it could be. I'd rather
These
it be,
really
I'd
are
rather it be
conversations
down here on this lower side, but if he's got to do it, I'd like for it to be number, let's see here, what number is that? What number is, oh, that's number 3. The number 3 position.
Well, we're not gonna
No, we're not.
tell him where to put it, and it's gonna be
Well, that way, the
underground.
reason-
It may be even better for us, so.
The reason I said that is because it would be further from my property,
Yes, ma'am.
and I would be happier about that.
You might be happier with the Hobbit house, once again, a sentence I've never said before. So, all right, Ed. All right, so commissioners, my motion is that we approve the original two plus a Hobbit house, and those three, with a little bit of flexibility in those three locations, along with the conditions that were provided by the planning board. But first of all, we'll need to develop findings of fact, so Jim?
Okay, based upon the evidence and testimony presented during the quasi-judicial hearing and submitted to the board and made part of the application, which are incorporated into this decision, by reference, the board makes the following findings of fact. Number one is that the development of the property in accordance with the proposed conditions will not materially endanger the public health or safety. NCDOT has issued approvals for driveways, entrances to safely access Flat Rock Road, and B, enhanced screening or fencing along the eastern property line toward Beaver Road should eliminate any future visual conflicts.
Is that a motion?
That is in form of a motion,
I
sir.
make a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion 2.
That the next motion is that the development of the property in accordance with the proposed conditions will not substantially injure the value of adjoining or abutting property, or that the development is a public necessity. And A, that we're going to put three new residences.
No, that's something different. Yeah, just read that.
Okay, 5 new resident units have been built within a half mile of the project during the last 4 years, suggesting the project is not a deterrent to adjoining residential properties or those in the area.
That's a motion. We have a second.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye. And number 3, that the location and character of the development in accordance with the proposed conditions will be in general harmony with the area in which it is located and in general conformity with any adopted county plans. Number 8, the material and evidence presented has demonstrated that Cherry Tree Sort project complies with general and specific conditional use criteria, and in conjunction with the conditions this board has attached to approval, suggests it is generally compatible with land use in the RA district.
That's a motion.
That's the
Second.
motion.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Then do we have a motion to approve CUP 08 well? So then the motion would be then to approve the 3 units with the flexibility of the Hobbit house that we
2 units in the
mentioned, along with the conditions that were outlined by staff recommendations, and that would be the motion.
Are we talking about a total of 3 units?
Total of 3, yeah.
Okay, that's my understanding.
All right.
And I second that motion.
Second. Any other discussion? Jay? Like you got, okay, all right. Anything, Mike? All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you. So item 4,
Can I interrupt? Do you need 5 years?
That's a trick question, like, yeah, I can use 5 or you
Okay.
want me to bill them early?
Well, the only reason is that if he doesn't need 5, then we don't need to go through this exercise. It shouldn't take as long, but you do have a statement to read, so please go ahead. I'm sorry.
well, can I call him up and can we ask if we,
I think you need to just go ahead and read that. It's a cumbersome process that we don't really get into that much, and it will change with some new legislation beginning of the year. But the way our ordinance is set up, we're having another hearing to consider going beyond the 2-year window of approval to a 5-year window of approval. And that's what this vested rights issuance is about.
All
So,
right. Pursuant to Section 21-11 of the county zoning ordinance, the board will now conduct a public hearing regarding Mr. Cherry's request for an extension of the vesting period for the recently amended CUP 08-16 for the 2-year minimum up to 5 years. If granted, vesting for this project is associated with the land and not the landowner. At the end of the vesting period, the vested rights terminate for any buildings for which no valid building permits have been submitted. Following comments for planning staff, the public hearing will be conducted in the following manner. Mr. Cherry will be given the opportunity to address the board. Comments from any other member of the public will be received whether in support of the or in opposition to the vesting request. If you address the board, please state your name and the address for the record. If needed, Mr. Cherry will be given an opportunity to address any comments made during the public hearing. The public hearing will then be closed and no further comments will be received. The board will then discuss the request and vote on the recommendation. During the deliberation period, no additional public comment may be received. I messed that one up. The decision by this board will be one of the following. 1, will grant vesting for 5 years as requested. 2, grant the request for a period between 2 and 5 years. Or 3, deny the request. Prior to opening the public hearing, are there any questions from the board members or citizens in attendance regarding this process? So, we're back here because we mentioned that his prior request had expired. What was it, 2 or 3 years? Was it 2 years? 2 years ago?
yeah.
So now he's asking, well, could we make that 5 years instead? And that's why we're here.
Right.
And so,
Yeah.
do we
It's-
need to
it's-
talk any more about that?
Probably not, but the ordinance and state statute says the commission may authorize a vested period for anywhere from 2 to 5 years when the applicant demonstrates why it's necessary. And the ordinance says that may include the size of the project, phasing, level of investment. Again, this is a public hearing. It doesn't have to really be factual based. I mean, it's a legislative decision. So he's here and he can tell you if he needs 5 years or what.
Yeah, Trent. Please state your name.
I don't think I need 5 for this. I try to build 1 a year, but I try to carry little debt. That's my thing. I've been raised that way, so I don't try to leverage myself out. If things go bad and I skip a year or I skip 18 months and then build one, like I pay as I go, I try to. So no, I don't think I need 5 years for 3, but I think I need more than 2 if that's the alternative.
Would 3 be acceptable?
Are we
Would 3 be-
negotiating?
Would 3, yeah.
Give me 4 sites, I'll do 5 years. Yeah, I mean, I might as well take 5 years, right? Because then if something happens, then I can have the extra 2 years to do it. But I don't think I'm going to need that, honestly. I think I'll do 1 at a time unless the business just goes south really fast. So you're asking if I'll do it in 3? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, I was asking if 3, you said you didn't need 5, so I said, well, how about 3?
I'll stick with 5, because if I screw something up and can't pay for them, I don't want to come back in here and say 18 months and do this again.
All right, commissioners, is there any reason why you wouldn't want to do 5?
I do it, so if I come in, say I build those 3 in 3 years, and I come in for rezoning, does that have anything to do with anything?
No,
Okay.
we start
I don't
all-
know all the
yeah,
rules here, I'm
we
just
start all
figuring it
over.
out.
Okay,
Thank you.
all right, thanks. All right, we'll open the floor to public comment. Anyone want to dive into this? Yes. Close the floor for public comment, and commissioners, any discussion on that? We don't have findings of fact or anything. So if we have a motion, we would have a motion to grant vesting, 5-year vesting rights per request from.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to give him 5 years vested rights to build this property.
Okay.
Second.
All right, any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, thanks. Let's throw Ed, let's throw a wrench in this for a moment. If we're done with you guys unless you just really want to stay and see how local government works. We're done with you guys. But anyway, thanks for coming, and I look forward to seeing you out there sometime.
Okay, so I'm good?
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, you're welcome. Make sure you give her your number before you leave.
I'm going to stop by next week.
Okay. So we're only through item 5, and it's going to be a long night, and so we're only through item 4. So with the other commissioners' agreement, would you all mind moving up? We've got quite a few folks here from the school system. Could we move them up from number 10 to number 9.5? No, I'm kidding. Up to putting them up here next. Would that be okay for you all?
Oh, that's fine with me.
All right, well, I'll make the motion that we do that. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
So, David, or is it Superintendent Moody? Be both of you? Okay.
Good evening, and thank you for moving us up. We've had a pretty long week and a very long weekend. But I think you would be really proud of the work we've done. I sent that to you, Mr. Church, and you, Mr. Eds, so that you can keep up with all the changes that we've been making and the work that we've been doing, which it kind of butts up to our Apple lease resolution. It's kind of odd timing that this would come. I just wanted to start with saying, when we looked at the first lease you approved 6 years ago, we had a refresh 3 years ago, so we're looking for our second refresh at this time. This is just a picture. You can't really see the clock on the back of the wall, but I think it's important. It's a little bit after 5 o'clock, and we have this many teachers sitting in a room giving us advice and input about our new lease and what it is we plan to do. So we do this work with a great deal of input. I think all of this work has led to really uniquely position us to be able to do really great work as we look at school closures. And so we appreciate the decisions that have been made in the past that have really led us to a new place in the future.
You say school closures, you mean due to coronavirus?
Due to coronavirus, been mandated by the governor.
Specific about that. Yeah.
Thank you. So what we're asking is we have the purchase for iPads for all students, K-12, computers and iPads for all of our teachers, their computers for building level administrators, related software and services to support the deployment, and this lease is for 3.5 years with an exact pricing that is in your resolution. So your budget resolution is inside of your package, and we ask that you approve that resolution tonight. I just want to end with before you, we're certainly prepared. David Blattner is our Chief Technology Officer, and Carol Herndon is here, our Chief Finance Officer, along with two of our school board members, Kevin Jones, our board chair, and Susan Cox, a board member as well, that support this resolution as we bring forward to you. We're more than happy to answer any questions. But I just have to say, in the process of what we went through today, as a matter of fact, we were able to deploy a device to every single student in our school district. And we're probably the only school district that I know of that'll be able to teach class on Thursday. We're rightly prepared to do that work. So we feel like we've got an awesome team. We've been collaborating with Aaron, as well as the sheriff and lots of other partners to be able to do the work we're going to do. Has nothing to do with the resolution exactly, but it built up over a 6-year period of time for us to be able to do what I think that you should be proud of. I think we're leading the state and maybe the country in being able to close our schools down for a period of time, but still provide quality instruction and social and emotional support for children and our communities during a really challenging time.
It appears you have some changes on this purchase change from your last renew.
Correct.
And so Could you talk about that a little bit, iPads for students K-12? Because that's a change, isn't it?
Right, it is a change. We did laptops for our high school students in the past, and we are moving to iPads. The new iPad is quite different than the iPad that you all are familiar with. I doubt you've seen the new iPad. It's still under, maybe it hasn't been on the market.
September.
And
Since
since September. We piloted at North Rowan High School to be sure that it would meet all of our needs. We had mixed results. Our students, some of our students didn't like it as much as the laptop because they couldn't video stream movies. But other than that, it met all their educational requirements in our software. And it is less expensive, but still a very high quality creation tool. So as you will note, our lease is actually less than it was 3 years ago when we renewed a lease at that point.
You know what the difference is?
$1.4 million less than the last one.
Say that again,
$1.4 million less over a 3.5-year period of time.
So when this happens, it's like happened last time, all of the old units will be taken back, and then they'll get all new units.
Yeah, and what we gave you was, or the way we calculated our numbers is we looked at, we had a company give us a quote on what they thought our residual value was for our computers at this point. I can tell you, since the coronavirus, however you want to look at this, we are in the queue to get these, and got our fingers crossed that they'll actually ship if you approve it and we get our resolution in time that they'll actually ship. But we are anticipating our resale value will be much higher than what that's indicating, because the demand of all of the schools across the country is extremely high right now. So we have neighboring school districts who are trying to buy technology, one-to-one technology for their students for the first time, and they're actually really struggling to be able to even purchase. So we know our residual value will be higher than what we've estimated. Good time. Our timing was very lucky with this lease.
The computers and iPads for teachers, was that the case before? Did the teachers just get computers, or did they get computers and iPads?
All of our teachers got laptops, and most of what grades? All
K through 8.
K through 8 all got an iPad because they were using iPads in the classroom. So now the high school teachers will also get an iPad because they'll be using iPads in the classroom.
Well, I'd like to hear from the chairman of the school board and also Susan. Also, we'd like to hear from your perspective, along with the administration's perspective. Sue, if you'd introduce yourself for the...
I'm Susan Cox, member of the Rowan-Salisbury School Board, and I will start this by saying I am one of the most illiterate computer people in this county. If I didn't have my husband, I would really be lost in the computer area. But I wholeheartedly support this. When we did it 6 years ago, I was like, well, I'm going to support it, but, you know, I don't know about it. I know about it now. I see the effect that it's had for our teachers in being able to do planning, the effect it's had for the students in being able to produce presentations that I have seen, not to mention the fact that the state is reducing funding for textbooks, and textbooks are obsolete, part of textbooks are obsolete upon receiving them in the classroom. So the computers give the advantage of having up-to-date information.
I'm Kevin Jones, Thank y'all for letting us come and present tonight. I was not prepared to speak, but I'd love to share my insight. As a parent of 5, I see it every day. Them coming home with their iPads today. When I got home from some work that I was doing, they were all sort of taking time to get caught up on the work that they missed being out today, and they were all using their devices in some way. They also had paper out. They also were doing math problems, doing other things, but had their devices there, giving them the work, and kind of letting them talk with their teachers. And my kids have other devices that we've gotten them, but they're probably in the minority in that. So their way to communicate as students in our system back to their teachers is through their devices. And that's whether we're out on a coronavirus break or whether they're at home in the afternoon after school or over the weekend or at school. So we've been able to be a part of some pretty cool things over the past several weeks and months. As chairman, I've been able to see things on a district level where we've been able to see the devices being used in lots of different ways, whether it's presentations the kids have come up with, whether it's elementary kids or high school kids come up with presentations, or things that they're doing completely off of the iPads or off of their devices, but they're able to use the devices to support that. And that's when we see and are kind of, I'm really proud of that, not where they're all sitting with their face in the device, but where the device gives them the tools they need to then present to a room full of business owners or a room full of parents or whatever it is, something they've been working on with the device as a support, like we often use, like I as a business owner will use my devices to prepare me for what I have. So I've seen lots of different ways that they're able to be used. It's not perfect. There's times where kids abuse them. There's times where they're used to babysit kids, but those are no different than what it was like as any of us grew up in school with worksheets that we were kind of stuck on or textbooks that we would teach ourselves with. That always happens, but I've been convinced over and over and over again the value of the devices in our schools.
Mr. Chairman, did this item pass through your school board for a vote?
It did.
It did?
Yes,
and
sir.
How did that vote go?
It was 4-2. We were lacking 1. I think that's right, 4-2.
Someone was missing.
Yeah, yes. Okay. Mrs. Clark Bird was not there.
How does the school system handle dead zones in the county? We have quite a few areas that we can't get broadband into to use these things.
I'm going to let David Blattner answer that, if that's okay.
That's fine.
Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you. For high school, we partner with Sprint. We have a program which actually allows hotspots to go out to students that do not have access. We've had to do hotspots in the past in lower grades through community and schools. One of the reasons for choosing an iPad over some other products is that it can be used without the internet. They can download what they need at school and have it at home, so that it's not internet dependent all the time. It works best when it has it, but it doesn't make it so that they're dependent on having that when they do go home.
So they can download.
So the teacher can get the materials they need to have. It's on the iPad when they leave, so
Okay.
they don't have
And
to
then they
actually.
bring it back up
and
when they get
They
home.
can bring it back when they get home, and they can then turn it in when they go back to school.
How will, about the only variable in this is the repurchase price. So if it came back, let's just say $1 million higher, just for an example, how would that be reflected in here?
I'll let Ms. Herndon.
Because the contract required Board of Education to pay Apple up to $12.3 million, so I'm assuming that's based on a buyback price, an existing buy. So this would be the purchase minus buyback is $12.3 million.
No, the $12.3 million is the total cost of the lease across 3.5 years. Whatever we receive in buyback proceeds will be used to fund those payments. So we've estimated what we think that will be based on the feedback we got from an independent company. If it's more than that, then we'll have more monies to apply to the lease payments than we originally estimated. It will be a source of funding.
Gotcha.
Just for information, most of your acquisitions are like our government acquisitions here, that we have to have a bid process. Now, it sounded to me like you didn't go through a bid process for this renewal.
One thing we consider, this is considered a sole source, and the attorneys have reviewed that we can only purchase Apple products from Apple through education. A lot of the bidding process, when you have something you can buy, like a Chromebook, you can buy from multiple manufacturers, and many make Chromebooks. And we chose that because after 6 years of building up resources for teachers and everything like that, we did a cost analysis of whether or not we needed to move away from that. But the cost of retraining, what would go on teachers to retool everything that's going on, we felt that it was continue with the Apple product, which is, since it was Apple, we did not do, we went through the sole source.
How y'all doing? For, I guess for my benefit and the millions of citizens that probably watch this on the video, you kind of just go back through it, because, we only got about 2 pages of information here. So it says consider approval Apple lease, but then it talks about purchasing. So just kind of explain how that works.
This lease is a lease to own, so at the end of the 3.5-year lease, we actually own the product, which is then we can then sell that and use that residual value as we need, and that's why it says to purchase and not just a lease, and then like we do with other leases where we don't own anything at the end of that.
So are we at the point now where we own all the equipment? Is that what we're saying?
At the end of this currently, I can't remember if we made that payment or not, which is why I hesitated. But when our last payment was made, I can't remember if it's July or if we've just made it. We will own all the devices that we currently have, yes.
And so so in theory, if you held off a year, you'd have $3.5 million extra.
We did a cost analysis on that, and if we head off another year, there's still a cost of supporting and maintaining that the lease was actually, that's built into this lease that we'd have to do, which is about $1 million in fees. We also, the lease brings warranty. The warranty will be gone, so all repairs would have to be done out of pocket, and that's what factors into that $1 million, as well as management software. When we did that, it came out to be about $1.3 million difference if we waited 1 year.
So then you'd only have, whatever the difference, $1.2 million?
We would actually, what we would save would be $1.3 million, yes, over 4 years.
So you're saying,
if we wait 1 more year, and you're saying that take that $3.3 million number, and we subtract all the costs we're going to have to do, it'll leave $1.3 million. That would be a one-time, non-recurring cost to do that.
so your applications that you use, well, hang on a second. Let me ask Jay real quick. So what exactly, because I get a lot of people emailing me about this, talk to me. I mean, what is our duty here? Because we're not here to say whether it's a good idea for them to give iPads to every student, even the kindergartners. That's not really what we're here for. But what is it that we're here to prove?
This is, they're just required by statute to come to you and get authorization via the resolution for them to enter into the agreement. Is that fair?
Mm-hmm. Okay, but what are we supposed to judge the agreement on, whether it's financially?
This is considered a type of debt, and schools can't normally enter into debt, but they can for some things like this, which are leases. This is considered a capital lease. So that's my interpretation of why it's in the statutes.
So we're just supposed to our main thing is, are we going to have funds to provide to pay for it? Not whether or not it's a good idea to do, or whether or not.
I understand this is not in addition to the monies that we give. This is a total of what we are giving them now. So,
right. This is the third time we've done it. At least I'm third time.
And it's because it's a term agreement, and I think Leslie's pointed that out, that it's because it's a term agreement and it's akin to debt. if it's a one-time capital purchase, I don't think they're here. But anyway, so
Right, we're not asking for any incremental funding to support payments of this lease. And in fact, up until this point, we've funded our lease payments through state dollars or buyback proceeds and those types of monies. We have not yet used local monies. Now, if we choose to, we would do that within the appropriation that you guys have been providing in the past.
So I'm trying to stay in my lane here. So the applications that you use only work on Apple devices?
There are some applications that only work on Apple, and there are some that work on other devices as well. We do have Office Suite on there. We also do use Google, and then you have the applications that come with Apple as well. They use a mixture of them depending on which tool meets what they need to do. Most of the learning's on the Apple apps, though.
Now, those apps are only available to Apple products, or you could buy ones that would work on Android products?
I am not sure. I can't speak to one for one on what would happen there. I'm sure there are some that would do both, but I don't know which ones that we currently use, if they would go on to Android or not.
Because I remember last time we talked about it, I brought up whether or not we could use some of the Android devices, which were, some of them are less expensive.
I do know that for my standpoint as CTO, Android devices are much harder to manage to keep the kids safe on there, and they don't have the management backbone because it's made more for a consumer product. They've done much better with the tools that we have that we can do that and issue what we need to them.
Yeah. Well, I think we know that teenagers get around whatever you put out there anyway.
They're group sourcing it so they can.
So what was the reason the 2 school board members voted against it?
I think in general, I don't want to speak for them. My general feeling was that they are trying to be as conservative with our finances. We, talk all the time about where we're at with what we have, what we don't have, possibly closing schools, and feel like if we continue to renew, that it might be something that we can't stop. It's a train that we can't stop. So I understand that feeling, that sentiment, but I also feel like there's the value that's brought to the table outweighs that feeling. So I think there was a little bit of a, they've gone through it twice before and sort of feel like we're still not seeing the vast improvement in our test scores that we hope we would see through it. And so I think that was their concern.
Okay. And so I guess you're buying these directly from Apple? Is that correct? Yes, so there's not really any, like you're saying, the sole source, so there's not anyone else to buy?
Correct. They're sole source, but through cooperative agreements, and we could see what every school system has bought iPads for in the state, and so we know that we're getting the lowest price because they can't if they give us a lower price or they give someone else a lower price, we can piggyback on top of that and get that price. We have the best price that's out there. There wasn't anything higher.
So, so buyback doesn't go to Apple, or does it?
Buyback does not go to Apple, correct.
And so how many different groups, do you put that out for bid, or how does that work?
So the process we used last time that we're going to do again this time is called a reverse bid, an upset bid process. It's kind of like an auction. We basically do a normal bid process. We have a winner. Then we put that up saying that we've had them $3 million has been bid. Does anyone want to try to beat that? And there's limitations on how much they have to bid higher than that. We will put it out for 10 days. When it comes back, if we have a higher bid and they meet criteria, we put it out again. And we keep doing that till pretty much we don't have any more bidders and the last one stands. It was done in Rowan last time. I did in Iredell when I worked with Iredell. It gets your best value for the money, usually higher than what the quote is that you get when you do it that way.
All right, thanks.
So, my head, what I was going to ask you. One of the benefits you said is, especially in this time where we're going to be out of school at least a couple of weeks, Apple products has the benefit of being able to load on site, and then the kids can take home the work. I know Mike mentioned what was the unit that you had asked about. Android, does Android have a unit? And then Chromebook was another one. So are you aware,
So yeah, so Chromebook runs on Chrome OS, and they've now introduced Android into it. Those do not. In fact, when I see in the listserv of directors, the ones who are struggling are the ones who have Chromebooks because they don't have enough memory to store what they need to, or there, because they're really, in essence, a machine to work with cloud and the internet. It does have some storage capability on it, but it's very minimal. And so that makes it so we're not able to do that. They also don't have the creation tools that the iPad comes with that help the students do that. Their creation work, like the way they do videos, the way they do other types of multimedia presentations. That is also, Apple is ahead in that space than the Chromebook and Android. And yes, we did look at that. We just found that it did not fit the need of what we're doing at this time.
And if you switch to another unit now, what would that mean to the school?
We would have some infrastructure costs we need to change, because currently we use Apple TVs to project what the teacher's doing, what the student's doing on the televisions. That would have to be retooled to something that would allow whatever device that we would choose to bring in to do that. Management software that we use to manage it, depending on what device would be, we'd have to have more. And the management software is where we put policies and procedures out on the computer that prevent them from going to certain websites, prevent them from trying to get around our stuff. Also for putting out software, if they purchase Reading A to Z for school, we can push that out remotely instead of having a technician have to go to each computer. We have to change that back-end software. Then the tools at which we'd have to evaluate the tools at which the teachers have built in their lesson planning, what things will transfer over to what we're going to be the new device and what won't, and training the teachers on that new device and the students on that new device. So there's a PD cost that would go with it, as well as the infrastructure build.
I'm not trying to lead everyone on this, but I'm trying to get out some information that, as a non-computer guy myself, in a time when there's so much upheaval, in a time where we're trying to write a new school system for the entire world, switching horses halfway, not through the stream, but halfway through the ocean, seems to me to not be the prudent thing right now.
It would significantly increase the workload on teachers and what they're doing in the classroom.
So maybe some consistency, in this crazy world right here on March 16th. Could we use a little consistency on something? I guess is what I'm not here to be a lapdog for the school system. That's not my job. They have an elected board. I trust Susan. I inherently trust Kevin and his judgment and the judgment of others. I don't have all the information that you all had. You all voted to do this. And the biggest issue to me is if this whole corona thing wasn't going on right. The world is on fire, it seems like. Believe it or not, I don't know if it is or not. But switching this in the middle of all this does not, to me, seem to be a wise thing.
Well, I would imagine that with the experience that we've had in our own office, going from one system to another, the biggest issue is training the teachers or training the end user of this system. The kids will pick it up and nothing flat. I'm not worried about the kids, other than how they.
Worried about the kids.
I'm not worried about the kids, because the kids are flexible. But the teachers have to be retrained in how to use all of this stuff, and it would probably take another year or two to get them competent in whatever else you're using in this. But Excuse me, that's all I know.
I just wanted to add the comment, and I said this to the board, and I feel more strongly about this today than I've ever felt before. This is the one thing we've done really well. We bought the right tool, not a cheap tool. We cheap everything in education to give them the minimal thing that we can give children. And today, I am so proud of the fact that we sent our kids home with the best that we could give them, that we've done the best job of training our teachers. Like, we're not retraining, retooling teachers to do something different. We allowed our teachers to have e-learning days, and they've already practiced how to teach from home in this situation. And when I said we've made a lot of really good decisions, and I mean we collectively, with your support and our board support and a dynamic team, we sent our kids home in the right place today and our families for this community. We're allowing all of our families to stay connected during this crisis that have a child at home. That's a miracle. Like, just that alone, if it had nothing to do with education, you should be really proud of that. So when we came to bring you this resolution tonight, I know I'm passionate about this, but I thought this has got to be the biggest no-brainer in the world. Like, today was an incredible day. Ask a teacher, ask a parent, ask a child. And anyone who did not want a device in K through 2, they didn't have to pick it up. An adult had to ask for it. And so we can give you those numbers later. This resolution is cheaper than textbooks in a classroom, and that's how we use our money to do it with. And when we do this resale, you're going to be even prouder of the money that we've saved. So I just had to add that. Today was a proud day.
How many books do you actually buy, Lynn, on average?
We still buy a lot of books, so I don't want there to be any confusion. We buy a lot of level books. As a matter of fact, we are in our elementary schools. Today, when we sent home devices, instead of sending home 2 books, which is our typical, because we have Destiny software, again, another great decision, we were able to send home 10 books with children today. When they come to get their lunch or we deliver their lunch on buses, we have plans to continue to deliver. Not only we'll deliver additional books, pick-up books, and give them more books, but also school supplies. I just got a text message from a principal today. We sent home basketballs and footballs with kids today that might not come back, but that's what they needed to get through this. So whatever it took, crayons, we sent home crayons, we sent home packages. We worked all weekend on a K through 2 a package to help our parents. So it wasn't just about technology. We believe in blended learning. So we don't want kids on computers all day long. But when they need to get there, we've got the best tool with the best software and the best infrastructure to do it with. We're going to open up our parking lots so that people in our community can sit in our parking lots during this time to connect to the internet. We have plans for all of that kind of work. So we're in a very unique position to serve.
Any other questions? So Jay, do we just need to pass the resolution? Or?
Yeah, that's all this board's required to do, or being asked to do, yes.
All right, thank you, guys. So we have the resolution is on the last page of item 10. Do we have a motion to pass that?
So moved.
All right, I'll second it. Any further discussion? All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
All right. So so we're done. We're good. Let me just take 1 minute to talk about, Jim has mentioned it, the issue of broadband, because like a lot of stuff, there's a lot of misinformation out there. 2 years ago, the county undertook a broadband study to try to see if we could get the private sector to bring broadband into rural North Carolina, or into rural Rowan County. We asked Randy Kress if he would head that effort up, and he has done an unbelievable job. So for a year, We put together fire departments, EMS, 911, GIS, planning department. There was a study area, so we had citizens from the study areas. We had the manager's department, sheriff department, commissioners. Who am I missing, Randy? Cooperative Extension. And we went through an extensive study. We sent out questionnaires to the public. The public responded pretty well, told us who they are, where they live, what they currently have, what they don't have, would they be interested in faster broadband. And then we mapped all of those responses. When I say we, I didn't. Randy's team mapped all of that, and then we invited the private sector to come in to meet with us to talk about their interest in bringing private sector broadband to areas in the county that did not have it. About how many companies did we invite? Okay. Large companies, small companies, and we showed them the data that we had. We did this ourselves because if we just invited them in and said, are you interested, they would say to us, well, we've got a lot of work to do ahead of time to determine what the market is, but we gave them the information so they didn't have to do it themselves. And so the larger companies, frankly, bowed out pretty quickly because most of those companies are what I would call fixed asset companies, where they're either burying cable or they're putting wire above ground. And since we're rural, in rural Rowan County, it means there's not as many houses together. So it's a very expensive enterprise to run high-speed broadband in any rural area in the United States. So we quickly began to understand that probably wireless, high-speed wireless broadband would be the answer. And so we've been working with some wireless broadband companies, but there are some issues that we come up against. Number one, there are a couple of sources of funding to provide for this equipment that has to be purchased to make it work in the rural area of Rowan County. And so there's a couple of sources for that. One would be a North Carolina Broadband Fund, and one would be USDA that comes from the federal level. The North Carolina Broadband Fund, there's quite a bit of money in that, but they don't roll that money out across North Carolina all at once. They roll it out in tiers. And so the Tier 1 communities, the Tier 1 counties are currently being served. Those are the poorest counties in North Carolina. We are not a Tier 1 county, so we are not eligible right now for any of these North Carolina broadband funds. We are a Tier 2 county, and we understand that Tier 2 will open up in July of 2020. The other thing to understand is the county themselves are not eligible for these funds. The providers themselves are eligible. So I've gotten several emails today from folks that said, you've missed your application date. No, we have not. We don't make application for any of this. We're ineligible for these. These come from providers. So, and we were not eligible until July of 2020. So we've not missed anything from a North Carolina broadband grant perspective. The USDA grant, there are several areas in Rowan County where we may be eligible for, but we don't have any providers that are showing any interest in applying for those USDA grants at this time. And just like the state grants, we are not the applicant for USDA grants. Those also go through the provider. Do I have everything right at this point? So we are looking forward to the July 2020 date. We've not missed any dates. We've not put this on the back burner. All through this process, the Office of Broadband, I don't know what but the North Carolina Broadband Office has been at a lot of our meetings. They have talked about Rowan County's process as being a model for the entire state because we took all of it upon ourselves to collect this data and didn't just turn it over to the private sector to do that. So they've been real pleased with what we've done, and they're trying to model that across the state. So rural broadband is a national issue. It's a North Carolina issue. It's certainly a Rowan County issue. It is something that is very high on our priority list because it's an issue of safety and equity and education and everything else. Economic development. Jim and I have gotten emails from folks that said, came home from college and wanted to start a business in an area of Rowan County where I get no internet. So I either have to move into town, which I don't want to do, or move into a different community. We get it. We know this is a big issue. But again, we just this week have gotten quite a few of these emails that where the information has just not been correct. And so we wanted, as we're talking about this school issues with the computers, we wanted to make sure that the public understood what is going on in the rural broadband. Randy, did I mess anything up? Pretty close? Pretty close, okay. Sorry to take that time, but there's a lot of folks that have put a lot of effort into this and wanted to make sure we knew where we were heading. All right. Ed. Solar energy. Thank you all for coming. Appreciate it.
So I'm not sure how you want to,
I think in the interest of time, and I don't want to cut us off at the knees, but my understanding is we're really not prepared to vote on the changes of the planning board for our solar rules. And I think what our desire is to send the solar back to the planning board to do some additional work on it, but that tonight we would ask to put back for a public hearing in 2 weeks, which would be on the 6th, another 4-month extension.
Yeah.
Of the solar, what's the word?
Moratorium?
Moratorium.
Yeah.
Solar moratorium.
So, and that's certainly one of the options. Going back to the memo that's in your packet there, staff had provided, I think, 2 or 3 options, one of which was to schedule the public hearing for April. The other was to modify the text and have the hearing in April. And then the third was to send it back to the planning board. And if you did that, that required an extension of the moratorium. Interestingly enough, and I think I shared it with the board after the meeting March 2nd, that we have had correspondence, and you probably have some additional that's been passed out or will be passed out from the solar industry that has in their 2 pages. Yeah. So their thoughts are that they would request that the board take another look at this, which means that it be sent back to the planning board. So this is from one of the same, but it's a different letter that showed up today, and they asked that it be shared with you. So with that being said, there is a copy of the moratorium extension ordinance. We've suggested 4 months. In conversation with the county attorney, we feel that at the time would probably be sufficient. I think we're going to be working through some issues of whether or not the planning board can meet, how we can meet, and those types of things. So we really don't know what this process is going to look like in all fairness. So
Is the county attorney and Ed open to a longer?
Yeah, but I think we can decide that at the April.
you could do that. This just kind of sets
Decide
your
the length at
intent
the April
to hold the
hearing.
hearing. We will advertise with the Salisbury Post for 2 different occasions leading up to that meeting. But this will be the ordinance that's there. The way it's, I think, excuse me, the only thing that would change is the date on page 2, where it's got the 4 additional months, and then it would say April 7th is when it would be extension from, and then we could change that date there in July, and then the effective date. So we could leave those blank if you wanted to do that.
So on page 2 of this item, there are the 4 items there. Schedule a public hearing for April 6th for the recommended, planning board's recommendations to pass those or modify ourselves, which would be done at the April 6th meeting, or refer it all back to the planning board and extend the moratorium by scheduling a public hearing on April 6th to extend the moratorium. So is it appropriate for me just to make a motion?
I think a motion consistent with options 3 and 4.
Yeah, so make a motion, we refer ZTA 02-19 text amendment and decommissioning plan back to the planning board for further study and extend the moratorium and schedule public hearing for April 6, 2020 to extend the moratorium ordinance for ground-mounted solar energy systems.
Second.
The discussion. Mike, you okay with it? All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you. Ed, are you done?
Feels like it.
All right, feels, you were done an hour ago, weren't you? All right, a couple things, and I forgot to, just forgot to bring up. I got this laid on my desk at my office today from the Salisbury Community Appearance Commission, a 2020 award for public art. The Rowan County Courthouse presented to Rowan County Salisbury Community Appearance Commission, signed by Karen Alexander and Jane Creech, the chair of Community Appearance Commission. So public art at the Rowan County Courthouse presented to us by the Appearance Commission. I don't know what we did, and what did we do, Aaron, to get this? You probably had something to do with it, didn't you? No?
We appeared.
The law enforcement memorial that we put up.
Well, I think they said it was a Christmas display or something. So anyway.
Do we have a manger scene up?
Yeah, no, that wasn't it. So we want to say thank you to the Community Appearance Commission for that. Item number 6 was a proclamation honoring the legacy of Alex Clark. Many of us knew Alex. Alex has a compelling life story, and part of his story is that he made some bad decisions earlier in life and paid dearly for it through doing some federal time in prison. And during that time, he turned his life around and vowed that he would come back and work in this community to help kids make better decisions than he had made, and he certainly did that. Alex and I became friends, and I was able to be up there at the hospital quite a bit as he was in ICU for 5 weeks before his passing a couple of weeks ago. And I'll just say there was, I would always meet someone there that had met Alex or knew Alex from different walks of life, and I met a man named Sean that was from Washington, D.C., that was in federal prison with Alex, and I asked him, how do you know Alex? And he told me that, and then he told me something I don't think I'll ever forget. He said, Alex fixed himself, and then he spent the rest of our time together in prison working on helping fix me. And then I returned to my own community, and now since returning, I've spent my whole life now trying to help improve the very community that I spent my whole life trying to destroy before that. And I thought that was an amazing statement from a guy. And we had, some of us attended Alex's funeral. We presented a proclamation honoring the legacy of Alex during that funeral, we presented it to his wife, who is a school board member, Alicia Bird Clark, a wonderful young lady. And so we mourn his passing, but celebrate Alex along with Alicia. And so tonight we want to approve the proclamation that we already gave. So I make a motion that we approve the proclamation honoring the legacy of Alex Clark.
Second.
All right. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much. We don't have Cynthia Dry, but we're asked to read and pass a proclamation for Child Abuse Prevention Month. Whereas child maltreatment is a community problem and finding a solution depends on involvement among people throughout the community. Whereas child maltreatment occurs when parents find themselves in stressful situations without community resources and unable to cope. Whereas approximately 119,339 children were reported abused and or neglected by their parents or caretakers in North Carolina in fiscal year 2018. Whereas 27 children were victims of homicide due to abuse or neglect by their parent or caretaker in North Carolina during the year 2016. Whereas the majority of child maltreatment cases stem from situations and conditions that are preventable and in and engaged in support of community. Whereas the effects of child maltreatment are felt by whole communities and need to be addressed by the entire community. Whereas effective child maltreatment prevention programs succeed because of partnerships created among social service agencies, schools, faith communities, civic organizations, law enforcement agencies, and the business community. Therefore, the Rowan County Commissioners do hereby proclaim April 2020 as Child Abuse Prevention Month in Rowan County and calls upon all citizens, community agencies, faith groups, medical facilities, and businesses to increase their participation in our efforts to prevent child maltreatment and strengthen the communities in which we live this 6th day of April 2020. And so I make that in the form of a motion.
Second.
All right, any further discussion? Thank you. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Mr. Kress, welcome. What's the plural of Kress?
I think they usually call us the Cress Boys when we get together. So.
The what? The Kress
Boys?
Boys?
Boys, yeah.
Yeah. Are you related?
Twins.
It's, 16 times back and twice removed or something like that. And so.
Gotcha.
Oh, I thought you were twins. Both have beards.
Yeah, so I come to you tonight with permission to move forward with the RFP for our radio plan that we've had for a little while now. This started out as a subcommittee of my telecommunications advisory board. That committee consists of myself, Sheriff Alton, Terry Buff, who's in the back with us from Salisbury City, Randy, Chief Boss from Rockwell PD, and is that it? That was it. Yeah, that was it for subcommittee. So what we're looking at, like I said, is moving forward with the RFP if we can. The overview that we got back from from Federal Engineering, our consultant, was to look at assessment for the process overview, infrastructure recommendations, radio recommendations, and our support contract review, which we have a support contract with Motorola currently, who takes care of most of our behind-the-scenes looks at our maintenance on our equipment and make sure everything keeps running. And of course, like I said, we're looking for y'all for the next step to come from y'all. Federal Engineer was awarded the Public Safety Radio Assessment. They reviewed the current system state. They interviewed all the stakeholders of the radio system. They came in and talked to fire departments, police departments, emergency services, and gathered information from that to put together the review. They reviewed current and expiring contracts. They consulted with the primary stakeholders to tailor solutions suited best for Rowan County needs and industry best practices. And they presented a final recommendation document, and from that document is where we got the recommendations that we have here. Part of the infrastructure recommendations that we are proposing, and this is the radio system itself. And if you're not familiar, this is an example of the radio, but our system, our 800 megahertz system, is a big computer system that has radio frequencies tied in with it. It's basically how it is a basic understanding how it works. Some of the recommendations we have is establishing a geographically diverse prime site. Our prime site now is in Granite Quarry. If something would happen to that prime site, we would, for all intents and purposes, lose our 800 megahertz system. We would still be able to operate, but we would go down to a conventional type method and nowhere near the coverage that we have now. To do that, to eliminate a single point of failure, the consultant's estimating cost to be around $450,000 for that. We're looking at reconfiguring a microwave backhaul ring to where now, if you think about our system, we have 5 different sites within the county, and everything points to it more like your hand on your fingers on your hand. But with the ring, we would connect all of those so there's no longer a single point of failure to take one of those out to where we would lose coverage in that particular area of the county. With ring configuration, we could keep the same continuity throughout the whole county.
That geographically diverse prime site, does that mean a new tower?
That, where we're looking at probably putting that at, it would mean a new tower, but the tower we're looking at in Cleveland, and that's later in the presentation as well, the tower in Cleveland is actually being rented now, and we own land on top of that mountain where we could put our own tower up. And that goes back to the, with that impact, we're looking at $500,000 was the estimate from the consultants. With that, what just said Commissioner Ed Young's Mountain Tower, we do lease the big tower on that mountain now, space on it. The costs for it are around $32.50 right now, and it has an increase of 5% each year for that per month. So we're paying somewhere around $42,000 a year now for that. So we're looking at eliminating ongoing lease costs, hopefully use it for a asset for a revenue generation.
And how is that?
Hopefully we could sell space on it to cell providers. I know there's some on the big tower where we're at now, but hopefully we could be competitive with that market and try to get them over to our side as we do that. There's also opportunity for fixed broadband service by the private sector, and I'll let Randy speak to that if you want.
Yeah, just briefly, I always try and hijack somebody's project to expand it out technology-wise. So one of the discussions when we were going through all of the broadband is having vertical assets. And so Young's Mountain being a tower site for the 800 megahertz system, looking at going from a lease to purchase would also give the county a vertical asset to negotiate with fixed wireless providers that have shown interest in providing area to that area of the county. So if this tower was up, we would make sure in the RFP process that it wouldn't be locked specifically to the radio system, but could actually use that for other towers or other places to be able to, broadcast from there, and that would be a prime location. Right now, there is just 2 towers that offer leasing, and one of those is American Tower. So that would give the county an asset to negotiate with. So.
And with that, we're looking at estimated cost of around $550,000 for building that site. Just to give you an idea of what a mobile radio looks like, it would be that very old fire truck that's sitting there. And the portable radio is similar to what I have here, but that's actually a firefighter design radio there. So with the radio, sorry. There we go. Somebody took it over from me. With radio recommendations, that was the infrastructure part of it. Now we're moving into what we need as far as the radios, what the people will be actually carrying on their sides. We're looking at adding a GPS AVO operation for the radio equipment, which would enhance. That would be mainly designed for our law enforcement officers. That would be designed for them so that if they got out of the car and had to chase somebody or they had to move away from their car, we could tell where their officer is. So it would enhance their safety greatly from what we have now. In the first phase, which we would hope to start somewhere in FY21, we're looking at replacing radios that were into support in December 2019. We have enough spares, we have enough parts that we're able to keep them running for a while, but at some point our parts supply will run out, and they are no longer supported by the manufacturer to repair those. Terry's Radio Shop does a good job of helping us out on that, and not a whole lot of cost when we do repair those, but as we move along, parts are going to get few and far between. With that, we're looking at replacing somewhere in the neighborhood of 424 radios. Then after that, we're looking at FY 23-24 replacing the remaining portable radios, which actually is like the one I'm carrying here. They're what was called a Model A radio, very similar to a Model T car, or a Model A car. They eventually ran out too. Actually, the insides of this radio is completely different from what the newer model is. So they quit supporting them. They'll actually quit supporting them in the 23-24 year range also. And at that point, we're looking at replacing close to 1,000 radios. So what we're looking at in the first phase, just the radio side is $2.5 million. With the $1.5 million in infrastructure, you're looking at the first phase actually being at $4 million total with infrastructure and radio recommendations. In phase 2 and buying the other 1,000 radios, we'd be looking at somewhere around $6.5 million. And that's based off of what the price of each radio is now. I'm sure we'll get a whole lot better buy from that than what we're looking at, hopefully anyway.
Chief Chris.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, if you go back one slide for me. So the GPS AVL option, are they going to, will their battery last for a 12-hour shift with that?
To my knowledge, they would. I haven't seen one in operation, so I don't know. I'm not sure if Charlotte-Mecklenburg has that or not, but.
Yeah, well, they have the option. I don't, we'll talk about that later. But so they're going to get, so everyone will get 2 batteries and a charger?
Right now, we issue 1 battery and a charger. If we have to go to that, we could do that, yes, sir. But I keep batteries in my place to replace anything that needs to be done or end of life for the batteries.
Like for the middle of shift, because, after a while, my battery gets bad and it starts chirping and drives me nuts, and I have to switch it out. So they would have an extra battery they could carry with them to switch in the middle of the night out in the middle of nowhere.
We could require that if that's necessary.
That might be something we want to look at.
So far, we don't have that problem with 12-hour shifts with the patrol officers.
But I think the GPS uses a lot more power.
It will probably use more power, yes. Either that or we could go to a higher capacity battery option as well.
Well, yeah, maybe that's it.
Mm-hmm. So we're also looking at consultants to negotiate with Motorola for our contract that expires in December 2021, and hopefully engage with them and try to get us a better price than what we have now moving forward. So as I said before, our next step was to allow us, my staff, to move forward with the engagement with Federal Engineer to issue an RFP for radio replacements, to solicit calls for the system infrastructure upgrade, and to negotiate the service contracts for expiring contracts. And that was it. If you have any questions, be glad to answer.
Thank you, Alan. One of the main reasons for bringing this to the board tonight is to get a nod of approval with the direction we're going. The main reason for bringing it tonight, and the reason we need that approval, is in order to issue the RFPs, we need to know what we're issuing the RFPs for. So by approving this, you effectively are approving the plan presented, but you're not approving the purchase of the radios. You're just approving for us to get with the consultant who we already are contracted with and put together the RFP for the radio replacements. And then once that comes back, I mean, this is going to come back to the board several times between now and then. So the vote tonight is not to purchase the radios, it's for us to move into the next step, which is to issue the RFP for the radios. And we need the board okay on that, and also to answer any questions before we move forward. But it certainly, after we issue the RFP, the dollar amounts Alan gave you are very good estimates, but it could vary a little bit, and you may get feedback from some of the end users, and the board can always change how it's implemented before the final approval of the contract with whoever the vendor will be.
How many total radios are we talking about? 800 some?
Total radios, by the end of 2024, we're looking at around 1,425.
So we just had the school folks in here, and at least they get to sell their computers and laptops. Is there any value? Do you all get to sell those?
With the radios that we're replacing, they're so far in the end of life. The last ones we bought last year that I bought just to have parts for were $300, and they've since went down in value since then. Maybe between $100 and $200 would be a guesstimate that where they may be at now.
What happens to them?
There still are systems that could use them overseas. I hate to say third world countries, but more places like that that have bought old 800 systems, 800 megahertz systems that could put them on there. But I think most of them now are being used probably mainly for parts to keep other systems running until they can get the money to replace them.
Where physically are the phones going when we replace them? And I think that's what the chairman was trying to ask.
The radios that we would take back in that are obsolete.
Yes.
If we get from whoever the vendor is, if they would give us a buyback figure for them, we could sell them to back to them. If not, they would be surplused out through regular means by the county.
So you sell them?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
But so are your, so we're taking out a whole phase, so we don't need any of them for parts that we're taking out at once, right?
No, the radios that we'll be replacing, we won't have any use for them. There'll still be some left no, not that the XTS, there won't be any left at all.
Thank you for all your hard work, Alan.
So on the last page of this item, next steps for the Board of Commissioners, allow administrative staff to continue engagement with Federal Engineering, which is the consulting firm, to issue RFP for radio replacements, negotiate service contracts for expiring contracts, solicit costs for system infrastructure upgrade and resiliency. Is this our motion, Mr. Manager?
Second.
Make that in the form of a motion.
Second.
Mike, anything for you to educate us on, since this is in your wheelhouse?
No, I think, like I said, the main thing, I'd hate for people to get stuck out somewhere, and their battery dies because they got the GPS going, and especially if they're out in the middle of the country, middle of the night. So we just look at that, maybe an option, or I don't know, maybe the new batteries are much better than the older batteries, but that's the only thing. And I think I'm understanding is all of our partners with the volunteer fire departments are relatively happy with the way this is going to go.
Yes, sir. I've met with the County Fire Association once, and I met with the police chiefs and the sheriff twice.
Okay.
All right, we have a motion and a second to move ahead with the RFP process using the consultant. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, we've scratched item 9.
Excuse me, I should have asked this before I voted, but he is going to take the idea of a second battery and get us a quote on that.
Yes, sir. And there's higher capacity batteries too that you can get that last a whole lot longer than just
I know the battery does.
Well, if you could, yeah, if you could bring that back to us and let us know which way we might need to go with that.
All right, we've scratched item 9. We've completed item 10. We're on to item number 11, Manager Church.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this is just a brief discussion on the Rowan County Transit System. Fiscal year 19, the service miles provided were 417,870. The fiscal year 20 is 423,409. So 5,500 more miles this year than last year from July to January. The total trips for 19 was 49,222, and the total trips 52,593. 3,300 more trips this year than last year from July to January. The Home Care Community Block Grant, this is just to give you an example of the most recent contract. As we all know, the price went up, when we went out to bid. But this particular grant, with the increase in costs, we're looking at a shortfall for 20 of $42,000 for nutritional sites, medical transportation, and general transportation, which is your going to the grocery store, pharmacy stores, salons. Due to the rate increase, there has been some things that we have not been able to support as we have in the past to the same level, or that we will not be able to support to the same level. Some is the Dan Nicholas Park summer camps, cooperative extension summer camps, the Carter House, Rufty Homes, meal sites, Parks and Rec, and Trinity Living Center. Currently, we have a wait list of 13 clients for the nutrition sites, and dialysis for Salisbury and Kannapolis is 15 clients. And that's in red because that's something that's pretty important that folks get to. And having a waiting list is something we're going to try to eliminate as soon as possible. So the main reason for the discussion tonight that we've been having is to move the service inside, in-house. What that means is currently the county owns the vehicles, and the county has, today we have 1, 2, 3 county employees that work at Rowan Transit. And one of those 3 is also the airport director, Valerie, who also made this PowerPoint. So don't ask any questions, no. But she's done a really good job, and I knew this would be late because it's a late meeting, and I told her I would present it. But so we have 3 employees, and one of the 3 is also the airport director, and all the other employees, the drivers, dispatchers, the training supervisor, and what's Vince?
The general manager.
General manager and the safety officer in the past were employed by MV. So what we're proposing to do is to bring that in-house. The drivers, the safety officer, and I don't know that we'll need a general manager because of the staff we already have. But we may need some form of a general manager.
How are you going to handle the service of these vehicles?
That's a good question. Currently, as I understand it, they're serviced at different mechanic or auto shops in the county. I don't know if we'll continue to use the same ones or if we'll go out for bid or how we'll do that because, currently the contractor does all that for us. That's in the contract. A couple of slides from here, hopefully I'll have a answer for you that's not an answer, but how we're going to get to an answer. So some of the bullet points of doing this is we think that we can at least do it at the same cost and possibly at a lower cost. This will increase our control, and it'll provide ability for us to implement changes, and we'll have firsthand ability on tracking reports and information. So, well, it's not two slides, it's this side. So the first thing, Valerie, one of the things she identified is to hire a consultant, and she found a consultant whose name is Ray Boyston. He has over 30 years' experience in transit planning, operations, and finance for state, county, and municipal levels. The last place he was the transit administrator was Go Cary, which is a fixed route system in Cary, North Carolina. He has a company called Moving Transportation into the Future, and Valerie believes it will be anywhere between 60 and 80 hours of consulting he will provide, and it will be between $7,000 and $10,000. And I authorized her to go ahead and move forward with that. So hopefully, Mr. Green, Mr. Boyston will be able to provide answers about how we go out to bid and find our mechanics and stuff like that. Will help us with all the staff policies, the training policies, the safety officer, and all the things that we have to do. So this slide shows what the organizational chart will look like that we're proposing. Now, this could change some after the consultant, but currently we have the airport and transit director, already a county employee. We have an accounting technician 3 who's already a county employee. Then the part-time office assistant, we do not have that position. We do not have an operations manager at this time. We have posted that position, and we are searching for that position. Transit and safety training officer, we have hired that position.
I thought we had.
No.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, that position we have filled. The operation manager position has been vacant, and it's one that was a county position. So the transit safety and training officer was the one that we just reclassified at the last, that was at the last board meeting, not personnel meeting, yeah. So we'll need 3 dispatchers and drivers. We don't know how many we'll need yet. So the timeline is, the goal is to be completely in-house by October 1st, 2020. We intend, if the board approves this, tomorrow we'll be meeting with all the drivers to explain what our intentions are. I have had conversation with the representative from MV Transit and talked to him about this deadline, and I think they will work with us as we transition into bringing it in-house. So again, what caused us wanting to bring this in-house is the increase and estimated shortfalls based on the increase. Historically, Rowan County has not used any, if any, very little county property tax dollars to provide transportation. Going forward, we are either going to have to do that or drastically reduce services, or hopefully bringing it in-house will allow us to not have to reduce services and not use any, but I imagine the first year we'll have to use some county money to supplement what we've been doing in the past. We have a meeting scheduled last week in March, that we will be meeting with all of the client providers that we provide services to, which is Parks and Recs, Trinity Living Center, Vocational Rehab, and Ruffey Homes, to all the nutrition sites, to explain to them what we're working on and what we've done and what we've planned to do. Yeah, Friday 27th, so the last Friday in March, we're having that meeting, and it's been scheduled. So if there's any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer them.
The problem has been that provider came to us, was it last year? Yeah, because we.
In October, or no, that's when y'all approved it, but it was.
So the issue they're coming up against is because the economy was so good, they're having a tough time finding workers at the price that they were paying them, because the market was raising wages so much they were leaving to go to other places, so they were having to raise their wage. As I recall, I think our increase was over 40%.
It's 44%.
44%. So there are other circumstances, usually they're cheaper than us, but all right, so what do you need us to approve tonight, just to pursue?
Yeah, what we need the board to approve tonight is to authorize staff to start moving toward bringing in Rowan Transit in-house by October 1st, 2020.
And I guess and as you said, our goal is to bring in as many of the drivers as possible?
Yes, we hope to. Tomorrow, we have a luncheon scheduled to meet with as many drivers as possible and talk to them.
So, I mean, they're going to go through the normal process any employee would, or?
Yes. To be hired, yes.
Just be sort of expedited, I guess, as a group. Yeah.
I mean, if our goal is October 1st, then the day before that, they would work for MV, and on October 1st, they would be Rowan County employees.
All right, I'll make a motion that we ask the manager to steps necessary to begin the process of bringing our transit in-house and operational by October 1st.
Second.
Any other discussion?
Thank you.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Item number 12, just our friendly neighborhood litter report. Caleb Sinclair, Director of Environmental Management, let us know that for the past 2 weeks, which was from February 17th to the 28th, so about 11 days, they have collected 4,225 pounds of litter. This is interesting. So we got some pictures here for you. So folks just pull off the road and they just dump stuff. What are the pictures we have?
I think that's it.
It looks like basketball goal things.
I have 3 of them.
I don't think that's flying out of the back of a pickup. So please take your garbage home. And, don't throw it on the side of our road, because we have to pay someone to pick it up, and we have to charge you taxes to do that. So it's cheaper if we just have you take your own garbage home, so thank you. Item number 13, need to set a public hearing for April 6th to consider revisions to the personnel ordinance. So do we have a motion to do that?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Finance report, Leslie.
The first slide shows annual cumulative current year property tax comparisons. And the property was revaled as of January 1, 2019. And so we are seeing the benefits of that revaluation. Our collections through January 2020 were $81.5 million. So far we have collected 96% of budget. In the prior 3 years, collections were 92 or 93% of budget. And that's 96, so in 2019 it was 92% of budget. The 4% is greater than, I think, typical for us when we go from a non-reval to a reval year, but there usually is a greater amount because as you move through the non-reval years, the percentages get tighter. So the second slide, which maybe I'm supposed to do, is sales tax. And sales tax collected through the month of November is $11.7 million. It's $600,000 greater than the same time period a year ago. In both years, 2020 and 2019, we've collected 44% of budget. In the prior 2 years, it was either 43 or 42% of budget. So we're in line. The increase over prior year is 5.5%. The next slide.
According to my wife, once Home Goods opens, that's going to shoot way up.
I know others who are waiting for Home Goods.
Her efforts alone.
The next two slides just show annual cumulative revenue, and then the next one will be expenditure comparisons. So through February, we have collected $114,800,000.
You went back a slide, or you want to?
I think both of us are doing it.
Here we go.
Okay. So again, the revenues is $114.8 million, and the growth over prior year is $8.8 million, which the majority of that is property tax, and sales tax is contributing a little more than $500,000 toward that increase. We're at 76% of budget. In the prior 3 years, we were at 74% of budget, and that's total budget. And the last slide is the expenditures through February. We have spent $94.6 million. That is 57% of budget. In the prior years, we've been at 58, 57, or 56%. So we are in line with prior years and where I would expect to be at this point in the year. Yeah.
So I know going through a reval year, there's a lot of questions. Have you been pleased with the revenue side?
Yes, we have been.
I know when you work with a tax administrator and they set the reval numbers, then we expect that a certain amount of money will flow from that. So have we been below that or above that, do you think?
We are above that, but we do still have some properties under appeals, so we don't have final decisions on all properties. But the appeal process has gone well, and I think the interim, well, interim tax assessor Phyllis Adams. I think she's pleased with where we are as relates to appeals.
All right, any other questions for Leslie? Thank you, Leslie.
You're welcome.
Item 15, budget amendments. Do we have a motion to approve those budget amendments been provided for us?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
I think I added one item. We don't have a closed session, but I did add item 15A. I don't know how to exactly put this, but due to the issues going on nationally and then, of course, through the state and here locally, there was a question today whether we could use West End Plaza as possibly in some relief efforts. We don't know what that means yet. It could be a staging area for food, for kids, or we don't know what that means, but we didn't want to go another 2 weeks before we would come together and be able to vote on this. So again, an issue came up about could we use the West End Plaza, whether it's the parking lot or whether there's a unit inside that we could use in relief during this coronavirus time. There are certainly there are a lot of rules that go on with that. There's the county policy, but then there's also rules that have been laid down from the president. And again, we don't know what will come down between now and whenever from the governor. So we'll certainly have to comply with all those rules. That's a must. We have to do that. So I'd like for us just to pass a resolution to give to the county manager the authority to work with folks within the rules given by local, state, and federal officials to be able to use facilities there for any kind of relief efforts that may come. Does that sound okay, Aaron? You're welcome. That's a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right.
Do we want to also maybe have Aaron come up with some sort of policy where in like emergency situations, he has the ability to do that?
Ongoing?
Yeah, ongoing. Yeah. Or maybe the chairman or the manager, whatever, something.
You busy, Aaron?
That'll be great.
Yeah, while we're working on yeah. All right, that's a good idea. I'll amend my motion then. Do we have a second to that?
I'll amend my second.
All right, will you amend all right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right, I think that's it. Be safe, wash your hands, and be well. And pray for your neighbors, for yourself, for your families, and take care of those around you. And motion to adjourn. Second, all in favor say aye. Aye. Thank you.